Hey Voodoo Power listeners, before we start the show, let me tell you about Strength Coach Pro. Strength Coach Pro is the ultimate coaching companion for passionate strength coaches. Strength Coach Pro is a powerful platform allowing coaches to sequence programs for an entire year, ensuring athletes stay on track. It features a simple drag and drop design for program building. It's easy and efficient, allowing for customized workouts. Another great feature of Strength Coach Pro is the real-time leaderboard feedback. Athletes love competition, creating a fun, engaged, and motivated environment where they can thrive. Strength Coach Pro is trusted by coaches at all levels, from professional to D1, high school, and professional trainers looking for an easy way to streamline programming needs. Whether working with 10 clients or 1,000 athletes, there are no limits to the support of this program. In addition, there's a 14-day trial for coaches where they can explore the platform for themselves. At just $50 a month or $500 a year, the value is unbeatable. Please don't miss your opportunity. Coaches can reach out to Strength Coach Pro for a demo today. Let them work to save you time and elevate your coaching. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Jonmarc Rasberry. Coach Rasberry is the head strength conditioning coach at Jackson Christian School. Prior to that, Rasberry was at Dyer County High School. Coach Rasberry spent time in the classroom as a biology teacher and a math teacher. He's also traversed the sidelines as a football and track coach. Rasberry has a podcast, Conjugate Chats, where his guest lists and conversations have been phenomenal. Rasberry is passionate in his pursuit of supporting coaches where he can, as a member of the NHSSCA Advisory Board for Tennessee chapter, his CSCS study guides, and his Google Sheets. Coach Rasberry has a Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology and Athletic Training from Eureka College, and a Science for Sports Data Analyst, Critical Reload Specialist in Sport Nutrition, NSCA Registered Strength Conditioning Coach, NHSSCA High School Strength Coach, NSCA Certified Strength Conditioning Specialist, USAL Sport Performance Coach Level 1, RPR Level 1, and Team Builder Sports Science Certified. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Steven, thanks for having me on, man. It's to be on, and I really do appreciate what you're putting out for the field of strength conditioning, man.
Well, we should have done this a long time ago. We have a lot of friends that kind of cross over, so in a roundabout way, we know a lot of the same people, and I don't know why it took me this long to have you on.
Man, I just heard nothing but good things about you. I think I just listened to Brian Adams, and I think I sent him screenshots like, "Hey, man, great job on this episode." And I talked to Loudon, had nothing but high remarks for you in your show, man. So I'm just blessed to be on.
That's funny. When Loudon come on, we were in the middle of an ice storm. We had a power outage. We had all sorts of stuff go wrong, and he just handled it like a true professional, and we rolled on.
The NSCA's High School Strength Coach of the Year, man. You know, he's a great guy. He's a great coach, and a standard for this profession. So shout out to Loudon.
Yes, yeah, he did a great job. So I was glad to have him on. Now, kind of getting back to you, you started out in physical therapy and kinesiology. Obviously, you wanted to get into strength conditioning in some capacity, and then you ended up at the high school level and saw you could make a difference. So how did that all kind of develop where you went from, helping the public in the physical therapy realm to kind of moving into the high school setting?
So I guess I'll start from the genesis of like how this was even a thought. At Eureka College, I was a strength and conditioning intern. I was one of the first interns for Eureka College under Coach Matt Friend, who is currently at Bradley University. I think he just stepped down to pursue another role at Bradley, but he was my first CSCS coach. He was my first strength coach ever. I didn't know what a certified strength conditioning specialist was. I didn't know that was even a job. So I got to learn a lot under him. But that kind of sparked of like physical therapy. And I think that's kind of common for kinesiology, pre-PT, exercise science majors was the end goal is to be a physical therapist. So started doing my research, and I'll be honest with when everyone else is listening on this, I wasn't a great student. I kind of skated by on a couple of classes, and I think that bit me in the butt later on. I was like, okay, well, if I have retake some classes, then I could probably get into PT school. It's where I went and worked at Athletico when I was in Illinois, still in my undergrad. And then when I moved down to Tennessee after graduated college, I worked at a pretty local physical therapy place, Dynamics. And that's where I worked with just pretty much any and everyone as a PT tech, trying to get my foot in the door. And so around that time, I think I was working there for about a year. I met my wife, and I wasn't getting paid it that much, man. I knew I couldn't live my life the wage that they were giving me. So one of the options was my father-in-law knew someone at a school district and pretty much had that connection. The state of Tennessee allows you to have like a waiver permit for 3 years. So I got my foot in the door that way, and was on a waiver for I think a year and a half, until I finally got my teaching license, passed praxis, became a biology teacher. And then while all that was happening, was coaching football, was coaching track, and I saw the need for the high school strength and conditioning coach, and I think that's where all that sparked. I tried not to be a strength coach. I didn't think I had the personality for it, or whatever, because there's guys out there that are big and jacked, man, and I'm sitting here 195 pounds, 5'10" at best, and I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. And then that kind of spiraled down to where I'm at now, where I'm a director of strength and conditioning. I've registered strength and conditioning coach. I'm on the advisory board for the Tennessee chapter on the NHSSCA. So it's been a really cool journey thus far.
Now, are you on the west side of the state?
I am on the west side of the state. So I'm about an hour east from Memphis and 2 hours west from Nashville. So I'm kind of in between.
Okay. I spent quite a bit of time in Tennessee when I was younger working. So we mostly were in the southeast, but I thought talking to you prior that you were over between Nashville and Memphis.
Yeah, Jackson, Tennessee. So I think it's probably the second or third largest city in West Tennessee. But yeah, that's where I'm at, man.
So you kind of talked about being a student and letting some classes bite you in the butt. So setting this up and kind of researching, I'd heard you talk about it. It took a few times with the CSCS, which is a very complicated test. But in that process, you develop study guides and things like that would help guys that are getting ready to go into it. You could have just took your test and been done. What pushed you into the Google Sheets and the study guides to help other test takers?
First and foremost, that test took me about 3 years, full of transparency. I'm not ashamed to kind of put it out there. It took me 3 years to pass, just off and on between, do I really want to do this? Is this something that's a necessity for my job or for the career that I want to go down in, the high school strength and conditioning realm? I mean, I read that Essentials book, and along the way, I just kept on taking like little notes, like, okay, this was something that's keen on the test that I think is important for people to know. And I kind of kept that guide with me and put it out there just for any coaches, any interns. And I've shared it with countless people, that either ask for it or pay for it or whatever. And I still think to this day it's probably one of the best guides that I could probably give to coaches that want to pursue strength conditioning or want to take that test. And I put it out there because I didn't want someone else to struggle the way that I struggled. I didn't want someone to take that test with full anxiety or whatever of like, did I miss something? Because that was one thing that, and I'll be honest too, I'm not a great test taker, obviously because I took the CSCS 6 times, but I'm not a great test taker, never have been, never was. But for something like this that affects someone's job and even to a point, man, it made me feel less that I couldn't pass a test, by 5 questions or whatever. And I don't know if it was me being hard-headed or being persistent or whatever, but I wanted to prove to myself and prove pretty much to anyone else that, I was smart enough to pass the exam. And I want people to kind of come away feeling that way, that they were smart enough or they were good enough to pass the test. And, I don't think a CSCS makes or breaks a coach, but for that anxiety part, for that part of like, I have to take this exam if I want to get into XYZ job, to have a little part in that, I think it's a remarkable part of that study guide and part of why I do what I do.
I haven't gotten yours yet. I've bought a few online before just so I could start looking through it. I have the Essentials book. I'd gotten all that stuff a while back. Not ready to take it by any means, but It's definitely in the library, and it's a good way to study and learn and pick up information, whether I take it now or in the future or whenever that may happen.
I was saying that, it's something that everyone needs to do or everyone needs those letters. At the same time, like, I think at that time and place in my life where I wanted to prove something to myself, that was something important. So I feel like some people are kind of in that same boat to where they're looking at it saying, okay, this is what I need. So just to have a little pressure off someone else to fully have that study guide me invested, I think goes a long way.
Now, on top of the CSCS, we read off all the certifications you carry, quite a few, pursuing education, enrolling in these classes, and continuing to keep the ball rolling forward. What draws you to gaining all these certifications?
I just think it's education, man. It's the recognition from all of it. A lot of it is just the educational part of it. Something that I'm interested in. And that was at Dyer County. Our head track coach wanted to do the RPR1. And so I kind of got that for the track purposes. And I thought it would be beneficial, just something that, taught the same language as our head track coach on a few different things and not be an expert, but at least know what's going on and how it works. The more recent one, I think, is that Sport Data Analyst one from Science for Sport. That took me a solid like 4 or 5 months to complete. And it's nothing more than just learning how to program, learning how R works or Python or, other systems like that. It's just all knowledge, man. I really don't care about anything else, but I do care that if it gives me some new skill or some new perspective, that I think it's worth it in my mind to invest in those certain courses or certifications.
And what you just said in the programming and in Python and the data certification you got, I know I'd heard you talk about this in some other podcasts, but it's really important to overlap in networking fields because right now you may not see the benefit in making the connection, but now you've stepped into a little bit different realm of strength and conditioning. So you've added. So if you know a programmer or you know someone that can help in data analyst, you're one step ahead. It might be the same with websites or getting your stuff out there with SEOs, things that we don't know as strength coaches. But by expanding that network, you gain the knowledge of anybody willing to help you. So how important has that been to get bigger than S&C and make connections?
I'll be honest with you. That's how me and Tucker C actually kind of bonded and became really good friends, was because we bounced so many ideas off of one another. There was a time and place where me and him just texted, I think, every single day about some kind of new programming, how we're going to do this. How does this look? Hey, can you help me out doing this? Hey, this doesn't make any sense. Can you like review it? And I can't even count the amount of sheets that me and him have shared back and forth and like, hey, can you take a look at this? Hey, can you take a look at this? Hey, this doesn't make any sense. Hey, I'm trying to do this. Is there something that you have in mind or that can make this better? And I think that's great for networking. And I think it's a skill set that kind of sets apart from other strength coaches, from the part of like that skill set in like not even just Google Sheets, but if you're looking at R, Python, or Excel, I just think is a unique skill set to where if a coach is like, hey, I got this in mind, I really don't know much about Excel or Google Sheets, whatever. Can you lay it out for me and make it to where basically having their ideas come to life, almost kind of like a pen to paper situation. But I mean, you get to open that door towards coaches. You get DMs and it's like, hey, how are you doing this? And that I think that iron sharpens iron at that point. If a coach is willing to learn, they're going to reach out. And then if you're willing to give that time and that resource, I think that makes you better as a coach and it makes them better as a coach as well. And, it's just for the betterment of the field. It's not for money. It's not for fame. It's not for, the name on your back or anything like that. It's really just pushing the profession forward.
Who's better with Google Sheets, you or Tucker?
Tucker, 100%. That is not even that's not even a discussion. But yeah, he's probably one of the best minds I've ever came across when it comes to Google Sheets, and even with this new DB Hammer stuff, man. He's so far deep into that field and what he's trying to accomplish with that, and he's got such a better mind than I do for that sort of thing, and I'm really proud of him and really excited to see what he does at Dalton.
Yeah, me too. We got to be friends, and he sent me his Google Speed Sheets. That kind of opened up my mind on what can be done on Google Sheets. And I know you have quite a bit of them out there, but that led me down some different paths. And then I made one for powerlifting here a while back, and I'm not very good with them. So I had to go back to the question we had prior. I had to go outside of the field to get somebody that could show me the formulas I needed to get what I wanted. And getting somebody to understand what's in your head, even though you're explaining it to them, and get it onto a Google Sheet is very difficult.
Me and Tucker have sat down and it's like, hey, I want this done. And I mean, there's times where he'll like put something on like, okay, let me reformat it because I want the way that I envisioned it. And he's done things too. When I sent stuff, he's put things into his own kind of spin on things. I think that's kind of fun. I almost view it like a puzzle, right? Trying to get from pen to paper, trying to get this idea in someone's head to a full functioning dashboard or a full functioning workout card or whatever, or a systematic report that I put out for ever since I was at Dyer County, where we look at individual athletes, we look at team settings and stuff like that, man. I think that's where the real fun begins, is when you start kind of figuring out what people want and what could their vision be.
You're on a question I had. I was coming into work the other day and I got to thinking about it because I'm working through the NHSSCA strength certification, and then I've got some classroom stuff I'm finishing up, and all of that stuff is supposed to be fun because I'm doing it because I want to. Nobody's making me do this. And listening to you talk there, it doesn't take very much, and you can stress yourself out, lose all the fun, and then it turns into work. And then it's almost just like it's just you rush through the process just to get your product finished, whatever that may be, Google Sheet, whatever. How do you manage to keep it where you want to pursue that? It doesn't turn into a burden and it stays fun, like you just said.
So I have done this as of recently, probably the last about month or so. I'm leaving my computer at work, like my personal computer that I've done all the school stuff and all the sheet stuff. I put it at work. I leave it there on a charger, and then I'll come back Monday, and it's still there. Part of the reason of that why was because I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time with my daughter. It's part of the reason why the Conjugate Chats is on a hold still for about year and a half. Is because I rather have been a better dad than a really good podcaster. And I think there's a point to where that might come back. But as of right now, I have a 7-month-old daughter, and I'd rather be there being a great husband and a great dad than to do a podcast. And I knew when she was born that something had to give, and that was just the one that had to give. But to go back to your original question of how I balance that and where it doesn't become a burden, I just leave my computer at work, man. I think that's worked out great. I'm not stressing out. I'm not on my computer while, sitting on the couch with my wife, which she knows that I'm kind of deep in that game right now. But I think right now that's been my move of just leaving computer at work.
I know I've struggled with it. Sometimes I got to step back and I'll be struggling with an aspect of it, whether it be, let's say it's geometry or something like that. And you got to step back and like, wait a second, this is supposed to be fun. It's a puzzle, like what you said. Enjoy the puzzle for the puzzle and get on with it. And it seems like things work out a lot better when you can switch that mindset.
I never want it to become work. I do things for work. I do things for Jackson Christian. There's things online, but at the same time, like, I have a personal life, and I really don't want that professional life to come into my professional life to come into my personal life as little as I can. The coaching profession is really, really hard to do that, to separate, your coaching self from your personal self. And I think it comes with the territory. We keep that identity on us as a strength and conditioning coach that, we're coach so-and-so, coach Rasberry, coach whoever. And that could be a difficult thing, but I think at the same time, I think it's to our benefit, mentally, whatever, personally, almost having that separation of I am Jonmarc. I'm not Coach Rasberry. When I leave these walls or when I leave this weight room, I am not Coach Rasberry.
Yeah, you got to find out who you are and enjoy being who you are. And then you can get so caught up in it that you just shut the whole dang world off. And that's not fun either because life continues whether you're in it or not. So I'd heard you talk about this with Peter Noonan, and I always enjoy talking to Coach Noonan, but you got into the idea of balance. In this profession, with everything going on, balance isn't really something that can be attained, or you have to struggle so hard to keep it that it just really doesn't work out. It's just too much of a juggling act. So how do you prioritize what you want and still achieve all your goals?
That's honestly a really great question, Stephen. And first and foremost, I just keep priorities pretty simple, faith, family, and then anything else that comes second after that. So, I mean, if there's something like I gotta go pick up my daughter, all right, I'm shutting down the weight room. I'm going to pick up my daughter. That's just a priority for me. But if I'm at work and something comes up, I mean, that's something I need to take care of within my work hours, within my contract hours. If we're doing after school stuff right now, that's got a little bit of priority unless something changes, got to go pick up daughter, wife needs something, or, something takes more higher priority. I think that's where I got balance from, is because I have a system in my mind of what is more important and what is less important. I'm not saying that job is not, less important than anything else, but I will say that my family and what I do with my time with my family is more important than the job that I have.
And I heard you mention this before, and I know we're all in the same boat, but you have to have a super understanding spouse because we chase some pretty big objectives, it seems like. And sometimes the spouse gets pushed back on that back burner a little bit for the job, for the goal, for the whatever it is we're chasing. How important has it been that your wife understands what it is you want to do and then finds a way to support it and maintains things while you're chasing it?
I have nothing but great things to say about my wife, about the kind of person she is and what she's allowed me to do we got married in 2021 and we met in late 19, about the last 5.5 years. She's the one that kind of kept me up on the strength conditioning journey. She's seen how important it was for me. She's seen what I've done, from beginning to end. She's seen me through all the teaching license stuff, from passing the CSCS to full transparency here. I've gone to inner city schools where I didn't really care to go, and been with kids that really didn't care if I was there or not, and gave them my all. And she was still there at the end of the day. And I remember, days I come in pissed, I come in frustrated, and she was always there and kind of kept me up as the journey kept on going on. I mean, my first 3 years of teaching was at inner city schools, coaching football and coaching track, to where there was a lot of days where it was just her and our dog at home. And, she came back day after day after day to support me in my dreams. And, I couldn't do this without her. There's no way.
There's a lot of things I've chased in my life, and it's very hard to chase by yourself. And to come home to somebody that understands what you're trying to do and helps is really good. I don't know that in that role reversal, I would be as good as some of these coaches' spouses out there.
It's tough, man. Yeah, I think it takes a pretty thick, like a thick-skinned person to kind of endure that. But I mean, currently now, in the full-time strength role, get to see her more. I think she knew I had endured a lot of crap early on to get where I wanted to be at. And now we're in the position where, I got my job that I wanted, she's got her job that she's wanted, and I'd rather have it sooner than later, but I think the journey was well worth all the crap that was endured.
You'd mentioned that in this little conversation we had on this last question. Kids that don't really want you there, kids that don't want to be in the weight room, kids that just, it doesn't seem to matter to them. Learning how to wait those kids out. They're not going to have the passion you have. Maybe they come around, maybe they don't. How do you balance that in an unwilling population?
That was a hard reality when I got into the inner city school side of things, especially when you are running the weight room and all of those kids are basically either forced to be there or they're there because, mom and dad's not picking them up or granny, aunt, whoever is not picking them up to later, so they might as well be there. And I kind of got that even from the private school side that, some of these kids are not as passionate about the weight room, speed training, conditioning, plyos, whatever, than you are. They're not looking at the X and O's. They're looking at, I got to be here. Let's get it done. Even if they're not the most engaged, I think keeping consistent and persistent with some of those kids as well does a number. I've seen kids that come in with crappy attitudes, man. They don't want to be there. Their body language sucks. And then by the end of the semester, end of the year, I found some common ground with the kid, and we are able to have a relationship with building something in the weight room. And I think it goes beyond just the weight room, man. I still talk to a few kids here and there, even from those inner city schools of like, coach, I need just a 4-week plan. Can you write something up for me? And, to hear that 4, 5, 3, even 2 years later of some of these kids who remember me and say they are willingly, messaging me saying, I want you to do something for me because I remember you kept consistent on me and your programming was really good and I got really strong. Stuff like that, man. I take that as kind of an honor of like, yeah, I'll write something for you. I'll do anything I can for you. And, it comes back to that quote of like, you're not just a coach for those 4 years or for whatever long the athlete's at. You're a coach for them for life.
Yeah, you get into the transformational coaching book and he says he knows how good of a job he did 30 years later.
It's the long wait game. It's not what you do in, the 2 years or 3 years or the 4 years for the kid. It's, what skills did you give them early on while you were in that room with them that they can carry on years later. And that's something that, like, if a kid can take care of themselves in the weight room and know what to do and don't feel lost and don't have this high anxiety to walk into a weight room, I've done my job.
Now, I dug through some of your articles. You had a couple on Team Builder that were really good. And one of them was Jack of all trades. In that, I think it ties into this last deal because you talked about body language. You talked about some of the things that you got to wait out. But psychology and learning to be a master perception of the athlete you're dealing with. How have you been able to kind of adapt that in what you're doing and learn how to read the cues that aren't verbal?
I've heard this quote before that body language is like a billboard of your attitude, your demeanor, and kind of the state of where you're at. I've seen kids, and I mean, they don't even have to say a word, and I can already tell they're having a crappy day. That I'm gonna have to talk to them at some point between now and in the class. Hey, what's going on? Is there something that's happening? Is there something that you need to tell me? Have you ate today? Just questions like that. And you go from being a coach to being not a psychologist or anything like that, but kind of like a counselor. It's like, hey, where's the things? What's going on at home? Just kind of questions like that. And there's some times where a kid's like, oh, no, I'm fine. And then you kind of keep persisting on them and like, hey, you can't fool me. It's all over your face, man. Your body language sucks. It'd be easier if you just go ahead, just tell me what's going on. And some of those kids will open up about their personal lives, about what's going on at home, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, friends. This last year I've seen a couple kids and I think like their friend was in the wrong crowd at the wrong time and things happen and, it affects their psyche and then they're wondering, what could they done? And, they just go into that spiral. They're high school kids, but I think in that article, kind of ties into what our job is. Like, yeah, you're going to have to be a counselor at some point. You're going to have to be a mentor at some point. You wear different hats. You're going to have to master a lot of things and be really good at basically a lot, or be really good at little at a lot.
It ties back into sports too. So making connections with sports coaches, working with sports coaches. Let's say you have a jumper in track, you coach track. Well, maybe as a strength conditioning coach, you don't know a whole lot about jumping, but you have to have an athlete prepared with the attributes it needs to jump, whether that be good acceleration, getting up in top speed, their vertical jump up, their horizontal jump up, what reactiveness better. You have to dive into all of those sports just enough that you can give the coach the athlete they need. So the importance of taking on that and learning the aspects of some of these sports to create a better athlete. How have you been able to do that?
That's a really good question, because I just worked with our golfers this past year. I had never worked with golfers before, and trying to get them to understand of like, hey, we need to jump higher, we need to run faster, and we need to be stronger. And they kind of bought into what we're doing right now at Jackson Christian. And part of that was understanding their game as well, because I'll be honest with you, man, I never played a game of golf in my life. I played mini golf at best. But I kind of asked some questions like, okay, what does this mean? What is this, terminology? And I think that's where we build relations and things like that. I think it gives us a better perspective on their sport, and it allows us to program better for their sport. Golfers are big rotational sport athletes, as we do a lot of core oblique work to work that area for our golfers, because they understand that that's for their importance. I'm full like bought in with golfers, because they'll do the correct technique, coaching, and everything like that. And it just may be where I'm at. Our golfers here are awesome. They take it seriously. They take our training seriously, and I think it's because they understand that the point of where they're at to now is like almost 9-day difference. Like, one of our golfers is benching 225, squats 375, man, runs almost 17 miles an hour, and that's almost like 9-day difference than where he was in August. And seeing those results and seeing, I guess their game getting better, because I didn't know this about golf either. It's kind of like a year round, where they golf on the winter and the spring, getting ready for summer and into the fall. So I think it's just really cool, man.
And I just saw something on Instagram the other day. I think it come out of KU, the vertical jump and its correlation to driving distances. It would be very hard to put that together and sell that to a kid, but once you can, and they do understand there is a correlation, a lot of kids like to jump anyhow, and they always want to hit the ball farther. You got a little bit of leverage there.
Yeah, and we also gamify our training, man. We do vertical jumps, and we finally got VBT. Really cool for our setting, our weight room. Guys will like inch and nail their way to be the top guy.
Now, when we were getting ready for this, we were texting back and forth and talking about different question ideas and things like that. You brought up VBT and how you're starting to kind of dive into it. How are you utilizing it right now? What are you looking at? Are you looking for fast speeds? Are you using it all the time? How have you set it up to start figuring out what it is you want out of it?
So right now I kind of run, kind of being the loose word. We kind of run a conjugate style program where we do max effort, dynamic effort, and the repeated effort. And right now I'm just collecting data, just making sure that data says makes sense. I think I started on our max efforts at like 0.4 to 0.45, and I want to see how far our guys could take it. It's like, let's try to get the most maximum amount of weight within that zone, and of course with the right technique, and everything like that, man. But and same for dynamic effort. I think we started at 0.7 to 0.75, and we're just kind of working our way through. And I'm just collecting data. I just want to make sure what we're doing makes sense from that point of view. And I mean, we only got 6 weeks left of school, so we're taking the next 6 weeks collecting data, seeing if kids get stronger at the same speeds that they were lifting at, and kind of going from there. Almost surfing the curve, if you want to use that terminology. How can I surf the curve to make sure that we're hitting a lot of aspects at once, and we're still getting the stimulus that our kids need.
Now that 0.4, 0.45, is that across all lifts, or do you kind of have a baseline for each lift? Because I know like a deadlift, you're going to grind out way slower than you're going to grind out a squat. But is 0.4, 0.45 the baseline across the board?
Right now, yes, just because I want to see how much of a difference there is between bench and then squat and then deadlifts. There's charts out there that kind of give it for you. I really want to see it for myself. Do I need to program 0.4, 0.45 on bench press and then go 0.3, 0.35 on deadlift for that same week? It's just questions like that. I think that's part of the fun of programming, and part of having that technology is assessing what you need to do and how do you need to do things.
We utilize it on our dynamic days, and man, it's been really helpful for multiple reasons. You can set the speeds where you want them. You can decide what the range is that you want to go to, but you can also look at work capacity. If you're programming, 10 sets of 3 at a squat on your dynamic day, well, if at 8 you're falling apart and you can't maintain them speeds, well, then you know what the capacity is, so you can back off and be like, okay, you can either accept the speeds as being slower until you can get them up, or you can shut it down for the day. But at least now, if you didn't have anything on there, it'd be an eye test, and maybe you see it, maybe you don't. But, that's a whole different conversation. But yes, I think how you're using it would be very similar to how we started and what we started doing.
It's just beginner. I'm not expert in VBT, or nor do I claim to be. But at the same time, that's part of fun being a coach, man. It's learning. It's figuring stuff out along the way. We're in the field of continuous learning, and if we're not learning, then we're being comfortable with where we're at, and that's something that we tell our kids all the time: comfortable being uncomfortable. And I like having a little bit of that uncomfortableness in our program.
Now you talked about it in there, and I think about that a lot. I think when we start this, we all have this idea in our head that we're going to eventually create this polished program that we can just use the rest of our life, and we're going to get it figured out. But that's not really the case. It's going to be ever changing, especially as the generations change, the athletes change, the sports of dominance change. How do you keep growing your program and keep adapting to what is being thrown at you?
Again, Steve, a really good question. One thing I always do is kind of reflect on our program. And what I mean by that is like, okay, what are we currently doing, and what can I do to better the experience for our athletes? Just because like I have this polished program and I programmed it for the last 2 years and it's worked well and I got results and yada yada yada, it doesn't mean that's a perfect program. And it doesn't mean that's going to fit for every situation. 90-minute training at Dyer County to 20, 25, 30 minutes tops at Jackson Christian. So I've gone from a linear model to a 5-3-1 model. I've gone from undulating to, conjugate style. I mean, it's just seeing what works. And I think that's fun being a director and saying, okay, for the next 7 weeks, we're going to run undulating and we're just going to see what it looks like. Are we still getting results? Are we still getting faster? Are we still jumping higher? Are we still getting stronger? And if it's yes to all those, then I think it's worth doing. And part of it too is the experience for our kids. Do our kids enjoy training in the way that we train? I think that's really important, not just for my sake of the intent is going to be there, but also for them, that they want to come back and do the things I'm asking them to do. And I think that's a really important thing for buy-in, for culture, and all those words that we like to use for the weight room, man.
The inmates can't run the asylum, but they have to participate. So your population dictates so much of what you can do.
Like our speed and agility days, I'll be honest, our warm-ups have became 5-10 minute games. It's like, okay, yeah, let's take a soccer ball out. We came up with ultimate soccer, like ultimate football, but ultimate soccer, where we have one full-time goalie, and they kind of run around, pass their team, like play soccer, but it's ultimate soccer. And it's cool, man. If that's what takes the buy-in for them, then I'll do it. Ultimate frisbee, we'll play tag, we'll do any kind of change direction jump, leap, bound, gain that we can to, one, get the stimulus, right? They got to get it somewhere. Might as well be with me. But also, that's part of the warm up. And I think it breaks a little bit of that traditional mold of, knee pulls, lunges, twists, high kicks, whatever, A skips, B skips, and they're moving. They're moving the open space. They're changing direction. They're planting. They're jumping. And I think that kind of checks a lot of boxes for us. It fills a lot of buckets, in my opinion.
I've kind of heard you talk about this in another podcast, and I wondered how it worked out. I'm starting to see younger athletes come in, and they're not ready for what the older athletes are doing. You implemented a 1x20. Is that something you still do? And has that been successful for what you're trying?
Yeah, so our middle school volleyball and I believe middle school softball is coming in a couple of times a week, and they're running 1x20 right now. And right now, I kind of go back to that book of Movement Over Maxes. I can't remember who the author is.
Is that Zach DeCant?
That's who it was. I can't pronounce his last name to save my life. I go back to that 1x20, and I think about that book. I think about, well, that's something that we preach to our kids all the time. The weight doesn't matter, and quality movement is at the forefront of our minds. And I go back to that. Justifies our coaches, and that when I was talking to our volleyball coach, I talked to her about that certain things like, look, we're just looking for quality movement under stress. That's how they're going to adapt and become stronger. And hopefully in 2-3 years they're in our weight room and they don't have to run the 1x20 program. When I first came in to Jackson Christian, our girls athletics hasn't really done any like true strength conditioning before I got there. And so when I got there, we ran 1x20 with the girls. And I still joke with them. It's like, we can go back to the 1x20 ways. And they're like, no. But it just shows they enjoy what they're doing now. But I think it's effective. I think it works. My girls' movement right now is really, really good. And I think part of it is that they've had a little bit of time to adjust to what I wanted and what the standards are for what I want for a squat, for a bench, for a whatever. And that's given them plenty full reps to understand what I want as well.
So getting into that 1x20 a little, by utilizing that, does that keep you from trying to find other ways to fill volume? Let's say a squat technique wasn't where you wanted, so now you're looking at trying to belt squat or do something like that. Does the 1x20 kind of take care of that in itself for you?
Yes and no. I always describe to our coaches that every athlete is at a different level. You can have a middle schooler that is accelerating at a high rate and, they're ready for barbell movements. But you can also have an athlete that can't squat, can't hinge, can't bench, can't press, can't do any of those movements. And you have to regress and teach them certain ways. And how do you regress? Is there a reason why they're not accelerating or they're not progressing at the rate that some of the others are? Is it because their maturity is low? For a lot of our boys, that's going to be probably the reason why their movement looks weird. Is because they're not fully grown into their bodies. Either they grown really, really quickly and they look like Bambi, or they're short and stubby and it's just not, the movement's not there just because they're not used to their body yet. And 1x20, I think, fills some buckets. I think kids get strong. I think kids learn quality movement. But I also think that athletes progress at different rates as well. So if a kid's accelerating at 1x20 and progressing through and smashing weight and tell me that it's the magic E word, easy, I'll go into starting strength. Let them progress. Like I'm not going to hold you back if you're ready for it. But at the same time, if they need more reps, if they need more time, if they need, just the development that they need, I think 1x20 has been a great program for us and allows us to establish what I want as a coach.
Now, is that your progression? You're going to move into starting strength after 1x20?
Yeah, that's what I've done traditionally. Just 3x5, do a couple supersets, about 2 or 3 tiers, and then we're out. But yeah, we'll go 1x20, then we'll go and starting strength, and then we'll go pretty much kind of like a linear model for our one, and then our top athletes, probably the top, I'll say 20, 15%, they'll run the kind of the conjugate style lifts that I want, the dynamic effort, the max efforts, and they kind of know what to expect for those days.
Now, max effort, are you switching out bars? You switching out movements? How are you doing that? And is it, I mean, I get it. If you're not at Westside, it's not Westside. But from the writing that Westside has put out, are you getting up there in that 90 to 95% with a lift every week? How are you making that work for you?
So, one, I do rotate some exercises in and out. I'll rotate like incline and regular bench press, and I also have multi-grip bars. So I'll rotate those in every once in a while. But I use the conjugate terms, quote unquote conjugate terms, just because I think it's easier on my mind to program that way. It's like, okay, on max effort day, we're going to go in 6 sets of 3, and we're going to go 80, 80, 85, 85, 90, 90, and kind of touch that stimulus, right? Touch the ceiling just for a little bit, and then come back dynamic effort and say, okay, we're going to go 45, 50, 50, 60, 60, 65, 70, or like a 7 sets of 4 or 5, and raise the floor. I love that analogy of raising the ceiling, touching the ceiling, and raising the floor, because it allows the athlete to lift submaximally fast, but also be able to touch the top of their lifts as well. So we're kind of hidden from both ends.
Okay, so in your dynamic effort, do you add any AR? Are you throwing on chains or bands, or are you just turning them loose and letting them go?
We haven't gone to the accommodating resistance just yet. I think that's a summer project for me, of how do I want that established. A lot of things as well that we do, I practice on myself. So if I'm going to give a kid chains or bands, that I'm probably going to do it myself first before prescribing it to them. Just because, one, I want to feel like what the athlete's feeling like. So if it's heavier, if it's not set up right, if it's weird or anything like that, then I want to be the first one to test on them and make sure that it's run properly. But outside of that, I think that's going to be a kind of a summer project for a football team of accommodating resistance. We don't have any chains, but we do have bands.
All right, because that brings up another question. You talked about, I know Louis got into it, 50, 55, 60, and then he would add on another 20% accommodating resistance to kind of get it up there a little bit more. Have you found that 50, 55, 60 is too light? They're moving it too fast and it doesn't move the needle for the high school athlete?
Part of it is, I think we just build up to those weights. So that 45, 50, 50 is building up for that 60 later on. And a lot of things that too, like our VBT, that tells me a lot more. So if we're moving 50% weight at like 1.1, it's like, all right, we need to kind of bump it up a little bit. If the target rate is like 0.8 or 0.7, we need to kind of bump it up a little bit, because that's obviously too light and we're hitting a different stimulus. And I think that helps me as a coach as well, have those kind of 2 or 3 sets in the beginning saying, okay, right now it's really, really light and we're not hitting what we need to hit. Let's go on, put on 30, 40, 50 more pounds and just let it rip.
Now, do you do cleans or high pulls or snatches or anything like that in there?
We have not Olympic lift. Now, I've done it in the past. I really do love cleans and snatches and things of that nature. But when I got the Jackson Christian, I actually took it as a challenge to myself to go through a full year without programming it, just for fun. Not anything like our AD said, no cleans, period. Or someone's like, cleans are dumb, whatever. I just took it as a personal challenge of, could we get results? Could we win? Could we jump higher, be stronger without doing Olympic lifts? But I think we're starting to go ahead and reintroduce it this summer. And, I have a lot more time to teach it in the summer than I do in a 20-minute class. So I think that'd be a good time to go ahead and implement it.
Do you guys deadlift then?
We do. We switch up from sumo to conventional to trap bar deadlift.
See, that's where I think, you listen to Travis Mash, and it's really interesting to me. You can get that deadlift right in the dynamic and band it, and you can create an incredible amount of force. Your watts will go through the roof, and then you don't have to worry about some of the things that go along with Olympic lifting if that's not in your program. I didn't know if anything like that was something you thought about or put into your program.
No, man. I'll be honest with you. I just want to take it as a challenge, as a program standpoint. I've done it for the last 3 years. I'm like, I wonder if I can do it without it. And to that question, yes. But at the same time, I feel like there's some just a little bit missing from that program, not cleaning and snatching. And I think it's valuable to a degree. I think it's valuable, but at the same time, like, I think it's also preference, right? The same way with how you program. If you want to go true conjugate, go true conjugate. If you want to go concurrent, go concurrent. If you want to go 1x20, go by 1x20. I think keeping consistent, persistent with the program that you're at is what gives you the best results.
I love the debate, right? I mean, that's where I fall. We don't do a ton of it. I talk to a lot of guys that do a lot of it. So you got to be knowledgeable both directions. And then, from running a podcast, the audience wants to hear both sides because you do have Olympic lifters that listen and you have guys that are not utilizing it and they listen as well. So finding that balance of the discussion has been really fun for me. I have heard you talk about this, and I was interested to see how far you had gotten it because we talked Google Sheets and we talked about the things you've built and the things that you've got in your head down into a program. But you'd kind of hit on making a Madden rating for your athletes. Were you able to pursue that out and kind of get a metric that handicapped your bigger, heavier athletes with your smaller, faster athletes?
So, funny story about that. I've done the Madden rating and kind of went away with it, but came back to it as an athletic score. So the athletic score takes your strength. So I think we did 1 RM on bench, squat, deadlift, and then AMRAP on as many chin-ups as possible. Power, which is our broad jumps and our vertical jumps. Elasticity, which we did the RSI rating. And then all of our flies. So 10-yard fly with the 5 build, the 10 build, and the 20 build for max velocity, transitional speed, and acceleration. And kind of compiled a 1 score into our athletic score. And that athletic score kind of determines what program you really go to. Do you need more size? Do you need a structured program of 1x20? Do you need to look at speed? So that's just when we start looking at like higher speeds of dynamic effort, moving weight, really, really fast. Do you need more strength? So do you need a little bit more on the max effort side of just getting, really freaking strong? It's really helped out, and it kind of justifies a lot of our kids of like, okay, why is little Bobby doing starting strength and trying to gain size or whatever, and I'm on 1x20? It's like, well, first of all, you ran a 1.5 on a 10-yard fly with 5 build, which I think equates to like 12 miles an hour. I don't know, top of my head. Your bench press is 90 pounds. Your squat is, 135, whatever, and you're just not as far developed. And I've had that conversation with a lot of our kids, and I think it helps justify. Like, look, you're really good at broad jumps, and that's great, and you're really good at vertical. You're a really powerful athlete, but your bench, your squat, your deadlift sucks. You can't do a chin up, and you're not fast. And that's not me being a subjective person. That is cold hard facts. That is, when you run the lasers, you are running a 1.5. You are slow. You need to get faster. You need to learn how to produce more force. How do you produce more force? You get stronger.
So kids want to know, that they're curious. And now you have a Madden rating, so you can look how it is right now. But let's say a kid wants to look in the future. Hey, what does it take for me to be an all-state linebacker? Well, obviously the team has a lot to do in it with getting on the all-state team. I mean, if you're on a team that goes 0-10, 0-11, whatever, however many games you play, you're probably not going to be all-state. You might make it, but it's going to be tougher. So setting metrics for kids that want to compare to what the kids got that did accomplish these goals. Do you do that? So like, let's say you got a linebacker and he was all-state. We'll stay with this example. His broad jump was 100 inches. His vertical was 31 inches. He was running a fly 10 and 101, whatever the case may be. Do you have those metrics where they can look at it and say, okay, he was on a good team, but this is what he was able to do to accomplish that.
Sure. And I've done the same thing with guys that want to know why they're in certain programs. It's like, look, let's use the linebacker example, man. And I'm pretty good with numbers. I'm pretty good. I don't know why. I'm like Rayman from the Matrix, to where I can kind of pull numbers and think kind of on the fly. It's like, oh, this kid benches like 355, whatever. But I mean, I go back to the dashboard and I would say, okay, let's look at this kid who's an all-state linebacker. First of all, you weigh like probably 150 pounds playing freshman linebacker. He weighs 220. He's 6'2", you're 5'5". Okay, let's get that out of the way first. And then we start looking into like, okay, he benches, let's say 300. You bench 135 pounds. I think that's a great metric to at least shoot for, man. I think I've given those numbers for something they can shoot for. It's like this kid also squatted 450 and you squat 135, but you also have 3 years to develop. So it's not just me hammering them. I'm like, well, this kid benches 300 and you squat, bench 90 pounds, whatever. It's me telling them, this is where you're at. This is where I can see you going. And if you're consistent here, then that might be a possibility. I don't ever guarantee success or say, if you bench 300, then you're going to be an all-state linebacker. That is a false reality given the kid. But I will say you will get yourself in the best situation possible, plus having a really good team around you and understanding like some of the things that are around our program now. If you're 5'7" and 170 pounds, the 6'2", 220-pound linebacker is probably going to beat you. That's not me being subjective at all. That's just facts. And I think kids appreciate the facts and you being honest with them rather than saying, well, if you work hard in the weight room and, do what I ask you to do, then you're going to be an all-state linebacker. No. Here's the facts right now. You're probably going to go through puberty as a sophomore. You're probably going to be 6 foot, some, probably. You're probably going to gain 20, 30 pounds, probably be about 200 in the next couple of years. So you're going to get a lot stronger. Testosterone is a hell of a drug. So you're going to be a lot stronger, man. And I think just being open and honest with kids, doing that, I get more respect probably doing that than trying to sell them something that's not feasible.
Yeah, and you're looking at a long-term athletic development plan. It's like, okay, this is what you want to do. This is what it's going to take to get there. Now we're going to fill in the roadmap in between. They know where they're going. They can track their progress. They can look and see as they grow, as they gain strength. Okay, I'm on track. So now they can help with what you're trying to do for them.
Like, let's talk about sprints. So your PR on this fly from January, February, March, and in April, May, June, this was your PR. You got a little bit slower. Why is that? Is it because we're not in the room? So you weren't here for if you weren't here for 2 of the 3 months, stuff like that. And those are just questions I ask kids, kind of every day. Is like, why are you not making progress? Is it because it's something I'm doing? Is it something, are you not eating? Are you not, what's your lifestyle? Are you going to bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning, man? Like, where are some things that are affecting your athletic development?
And that makes a lot of sense. And when they walk in, they all have goals. And our job is to help them hit those goals. So if we don't even know what the goals are, how the heck are they going to know what the goals are? Now we can move in a little bit different direction because we've talked about a lot of training and we've talked about Google Sheets and all these different things, but the podcast, and I know not everybody's a podcaster or enjoys making a podcast, but obviously you do. But something everybody could have in common is overcoming the fear of putting yourself out there. I've heard you talk about being a little bit of an introvert. Well, you decided to do a podcast. Well, that seems like anti-introverted thinking. How are you able to overcome that, put out what you're thinking, and handle the responses?
Part of it is that, I've got really supportive group of coaches that I bounce ideas off all the time. And part of that I guess putting yourself out there comes from having a little bit of confidence. When you put stuff out of line, I mean, you kind of have to believe what you're putting out there, right? You wholeheartedly believe of whatever product that you're putting out, or if you're saying that's, I don't know, freshmen shouldn't touch the barbell, or, stuff like that, man, or Olympic lifts. You put it out there because you wholeheartedly believe it. I think the combination of those two really have boosted my confidence in this field and boosted the way that I view training. I think it's allowed me to kind of come out of my shell as a high introvert.
Now I could understand that. And when I started this, I didn't know what I didn't know. And you start talking to guys that do know, and they start opening your eyes up to this whole new world out there that you never knew existed. So in saying that, letting what the coaches are telling you plant seeds. You may not go and change your whole program because a coach says something that's really cool, but it plants a seed, and then one day down the road, you find yourself down that rabbit hole. Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, a lot of times, yeah. So when I got VBT, I went on a whole rabbit hole about how force and impulse and momentum are kind of the big three instead of looking at speed, power, strength, and went down this big rabbit hole of like how can we assess that more force and higher impulse and that stuff like that. So yes, there are some things that high influences, and of course things like Tucker's DB system, and that gets me going of like, okay, what are we doing here to drive neural adaptations and stuff like that. And again, I said before, but that's kind of the fun of coaching, man. You get to have these little nuggets, and then you go down a rabbit hole, and like that was really like a deep level of thinking. And then you kind of move on, and then you go back down another rabbit hole, and then I don't know, it's fun.
Have you ever noticed that as you talk to more people and you kind of open up that base, that you can see how certain guys were able to connect the dots and get to where they are?
That's why I like talking to people and talking to people about their programs, is because I want to see what they're thinking and what their thoughts are on certain things. Why are they programming the way that they program? Because to me, that's fun. To me, that I get inside their brain a little bit of like their thinking. Is my thinking and their thinking are way two different things, and I still think that's the funnest part of this field, is learning new things and seeing how that could apply to our setting. Because not everything will apply to your setting or my setting. Everything that we hear from clinics or conferences or conversations, not everything applies. But taking a little like nugget and saying, how can that apply here? Because I think that'll be beneficial. Do we have the tools? Do we have the resources? Do we have the time? I think that's a great way to, one, professionally develop, but also to connect with other coaches and get inside their minds. Like, hey, this is what I was thinking. Well, did you think it from this angle? And then we get the kind of this like tennis match of strength conditioning. It's kind of fun.
I've eaten up a good chunk of your afternoon, so I got a couple questions, and then we'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. But because you do podcast and you do record and you do talk through a mic, I thought this might be interesting. You've taken the NHSSCA course, and it's all broke out into chapters that you read. So as I've been going through that, I've been looking at that, and I'm like, there's a lot of hours there reading all of that, taking the tests. Could it benefit that course if you did it in a video style that went along with the chapter, so that you could do that on your commute, or you could do that on a road trip? How do you think that would change that course?
Some people just learn differently. Some people are auditory listeners. I'm one of them. That's why I like podcasts. I rather sit and listen to a video than to read. Some people are more hands-on, that they need to have some kind of structure there of like, hey, here's a program, here's how it works. Now here's a question that goes with that. Or they're more visual learners where they can see the video or see the writing on the wall or whatever, and that's how they learn. I just know for me, auditory listener, man, I think it'll benefit some if it was put like in a video format, to where it's accommodating for guys that are more visually inclined and that's how they learn, or someone like me that I can pop it into my car and just go on drive, and I can sit there and kind of listen as we kind of go through, let's say hour drive. I think that's beneficial for sure.
As I was going through it the other day, I was just thinking about that. I know I've taken some other courses, and there are a a lot of them that are dependent on video, or the guy, whoever the instructor is, telling you the ideas, and then, the quiz at the end. And so that was what I was going through. But I also was going to ask you about this, and maybe this will be the last one so you can enjoy your evening. But you write for different associations. You've wrote for the NHSSCA a little bit. You've blogged on that. You've blogged with Team Builder. You submit your articles, and then I would imagine there's some sort of editor feedback on what they would like to see or what you need to change. How do you handle that, and how do you adjust to make your articles or blog more easily digestible, I guess I would say?
Sure. I mean, that comes from a different perspective, man. I really do like when the editors come back and it's like, here's what I thought. It's because one, if it's keeping the main thing, and the message is still the same, but the wording is a little bit more, not simplistic, but I guess digestible and easier to like chew and understand, then fine. That if that's what it takes to get my message across on a certain article, then fine. Edit it to where you think it gets the most appeal. It will appeal to a multitude of audiences.
That's just what I was wondering. I mean, starting to send stuff out and starting to get some feedback. I didn't know how you viewed that in your experience.
I mean, I think just being professional and saying, here's a message for this article. Here's what I have written down. If this is what you think gets the point across easier or more digestible, then fine. And I mean, to those articles too, people put at the end your bios and how to contact you. So if someone was really interested in learning more, they'll contact you about that. I think that's when you start going down the rabbit hole and saying, here's my true thoughts, and here's where I'm coming from, and having that discussion with those coaches, man.
Well, Coach, I appreciate all the time you spent. Like I said, we should have did this way sooner. I'm glad we were able to sit down and do it. This was great. We got to cover so much territory, and you're putting so much stuff out there that it led to a lot of good questions, I hope.
Stephen, I really do appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this and for your podcast, man. It's really grown over the last 2-ish years that you've been doing it. I mean, from when I started listening, and I mean, the guests that you have on are really awesome. I really enjoyed, especially hearing from the high school side of coaches, and I really appreciate being one of those coaches on here, man. It's been an honor.
Well, thank you very much. I know you do it. You do one yourself, and you do a great job. So being able to get us together and talk about different ideas, I was really happy that we had time.
Likewise, man. Likewise. I appreciate you so much, Coach.
Same to you, Coach, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you.